Welcome to episode 100. Yes, it's 100, it's a century. I'll raise my bat to the pavilion, etc., etc. But we're not going to waste any more time patting ourselves on our backs. Instead, we are dedicating this episode to one of the albums that has come to define heavy metal since it first released in September 1990. Both Peter and I have been aching to talk some Judas Priest ever since we started the pod, and it's only taken us 100 episodes to finally get around to it. We're talking about Painkiller. Peter, are you excited?
Fuck yeah, man. I mean, this album, I don't know. I'm going to dive straight into it. I mean, those of you who heard the verses with Death, I still remember watching this video. And I think this was the time where I was living in Abu Dhabi. So it had like those French music channels, I think MCM or something like that. And they'd play metal like post 11. So I was flipping through channels. I was waiting for the metal time or the rock. And then suddenly this song comes on. And everyone knows it's an iconic video, right? And I was like, what the hell? Like, this is like, who are these guys? And then, of course, Judas Priest. And you're like, okay, how do I search for this? Because I had like a computer which was shared by the entire family, right? So it's like, okay. But yeah, man, I mean, blew my mind. Still, when I was like prepping up for this episode, watching the video, it gives me goosebumps. And yeah, I think nothing really prepares you for an album or a song like that, right?
This is the actual Painkiller video you're talking about.
Yeah, the actual Painkiller video.
Is this the edit or the original video? Because there's an edit in which it's just the band, but the original video is this kind of skeezy video where these guys are driving around and the guy plays the guitar on the girl's leg and stuff like that, the solo on the girl's leg. So which version did you see? I'm guessing since you were in Abu Dhabi, it would have just been the band.
Yeah, it would have just been the band. And I think, again, I think that's the best that my memory serves me, really.
Okay, for those of you wondering whose voice that was, well, let's see if you can recognize it. Can't recognize it? Okay, fine, I'll tell you. It's Ravi Balarkrishnan again, who's quickly becoming one of the pod's favorite guests. Thanks, Ravi, for joining in. Do you remember your first time with Painkiller?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I practically erased my childhood memories for Painkiller, literally. So at that point of time, one of the people in my friend circle had landed the tape. And, we were in made of money. So all of us weren't like buying tapes and I'd run out of all material to record stuff on. So there was this old Hitachi tape which had a bunch of songs that I was listening to when I was a child. Stuff like Yes Sir, I Can Boogie, Boogie Woogie All Night Long and stuff. It was one of the first tapes my parents had ever recorded, okay? And of course, without their permission, I taped over that and like had Painkiller on that instead. I heard this album obsessively. I mean, I heard it to the point where I was like, it was almost like an addiction. I was listening to it some 3 times a day, back to back. And, unfortunately, however good an album, if you listen to it 3 times a day, back to back, you start noticing things that irritate you slightly. And then those things just become bigger and bigger and bigger. And so I didn't hear the album for a decade until I picked it up on CD later. And, now it's, of course, a favorite, but yeah, not one that I now know that I can't like OD on it anymore. So,
but is this the remaster that you picked up on CD?
No, I got the original issue. I think the remaster came out maybe around a few years after I picked up the,
okay.
So it's the original mix and what have you. No bonus tracks.
Okay. And yes, like every all A's in the past, we have the journo who knows Bono. Well, maybe not yet. That's a very bad attempt at rhyme. But welcome back, Mr. Anurag Tagat. Anurag, you're here today to kind of rein us metalhead fanboys in, aren't you?
I don't know, man. Like, it's a free country, last I checked. But yeah, I definitely hadn't heard Painkiller as much as, I probably heard it literally once, I guess, like, in the past when I was introduced to it. And then when you asked me to sort of and then I saw them at Walk-In, and then I figured that,
Sure.
I mean, when you see a band like that
Humble brag.
Humble brag. Like I just saw them at Walk-In down the road.
when you see a band like that, like do like a headline set at Walk-In, I guess it was. I mean, the music really sticks with you, like every song. So like that really made me like dive back into a lot of their stuff, and including Painkiller. So yeah, and I guess it's been a while since then. So yeah, it's maybe like after about 4 or 5 years that I'm listening to it again, thinking about those days, I suppose.
Hmm. Okay. Anyways, before we get into each and every song and try to rate them a grade, because that's what we do here at All A's Albums, let's give you some context behind this album. And very quickly, Painkiller is Judas Priest's 12th album, released in September 1990. It's an album that follows Turbo and Ram It Down, two slightly experimentalish albums of sorts by the band, which didn't really go down all that well with their fans, especially the OGs. And then there's a weird court case that's on their heads as well, where the band is accused of subliminal messages in their song that has apparently led to 2 youth killing themselves. Ouch. So it's safe to say that in hindsight, of course, and all of this is in hindsight, that the band is in a space where they need to prove themselves weirdly or something of that sort, or just reinvigorate themselves. It's also the band's first with a new drummer, Scott Travis, who becomes the first American and non-Britisher to join the band. The album was eventually recorded in France in early 1990, mixed in the Netherlands later that year. It was produced by Chris Sangarides. I don't know how to pronounce
I'm
that.
I'm so glad you
Christy.
took it. Christy. Yeah.
Christy, that's how I'm going to refer to him, marking the first time since 1978's Killing Machine that Judas Priest has not worked with a longtime favorite of the band, Tom Allom. And the first time since 1976's Sad Wings of Destiny that Judas Priest and Christy are working together again. Anyways, in short, 11 songs on a 12-song album, 11 new songs as such, because the 12th is a live recording of Leather Rebel. And all of that totally clocks in at around 55 minutes or so. And that's Painkiller in a nutshell. But we are here to do all A's, and which means let's begin each and every song, going through each and every song, starting off with Painkiller. Who wants to go first? Because honestly, is there anything that needs to be said about this song?
Nope.
I don't know. I'm like,
Yeah,
I mean,
it's like when you're really happy with an parcel that comes in from eBay, and you see the reviews, and it's like A plus, and there's like pluses stretching up to the 86 character limit to whatever is there on eBay. So you can't have a better, more iconic metal song, and a better album opener. It ticks practically every single box there is to tick, and I think it kind of, the entire album in general, but that song in particular kind of set the template for metal, that is the non-Pantera metal through the 90s, the kind of stuff that Gamma Ray and Savior and a whole bunch of these European metal bands were playing. In fact, I think I'd done a list a while back for a friend called the top 5 Painkiller metal albums, because, it's
nice.
when you describe something that way, you know just what you're getting into. And, you have Cage, you have Gamma Ray. It's amazing.
So what's your rating, Ravi?
Well, A plus is stretching into infinity. Yeah.
Yep. Peter, you want to grade it?
I mean, if I give it anything less than an A plus plus would be not fair, but like Ravi kind of went all the way. But the only thing I want to add here, right, is something that I said on the Death verses is, you think this song, nobody can do it better, or like Judas Priest, and then you hear the Death version, which is like, what the hell? And for a band like them to do the song. But yeah, man, this is a killer track. I don't think I can add anything more than what Ravi already did.
Okay. Anurag?
Yeah, and I feel like surprisingly, the first time I heard Painkiller, I mean, you guys are gonna kill me for this, but 2007 Launchpad, Decibel from New Delhi covered. And that
You
was
must have thought, what a shit song.
Oh, let me add this. I was thrilled that Decibel played Painkiller on that in that gig. I was ecstatic as fuck when they showed me the set list.
right.
And it included Painkiller because I was like, fuck, finally we'll get to hear some good fucking metal.
Right.
And they did a good job with it.
Oh,
Yeah,
they did. That's
good
good.
job, honestly. Like, I felt like when I heard it, I was like, wow, like, this is the first time I'm hearing a band cover Judas Priest. I think at least at that point, that was the first time I'd seen.
It couldn't be the first time you've ever heard a band covering
Yeah,
Judas
come on,
Priest.
dude.
I mean, Breaking the Law has been the first song that bands cover.
Yeah, exactly.
Victim of changes.
Heavy metal bands at that point. Like, I was only in the scene for like maybe less than a year at that point, so I hadn't seen that many.
Yeah, and by then, actually, yeah, I agree with you. Judas Priest love was hard to find. Most bands would go the Metallica, Megadeth, Slayer route
yeah.
instead.
Pantera, Sepultura, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, I mean, that was my interest. But like, obviously, fast forward many years to seeing this live and to just like completely get into it. Like, it was, it's definitive, man. Like, when like, just if this song went to a nightclub, the bouncer would just take off the velvet rope and be like, yes, right. So that's pretty much where Painkiller stands, I guess. So yeah, A++++++.
Yeah. The interesting thing about Painkiller, though, is the entire drum pattern it ends with. And Animesh, you probably remember this when I first made you hear Mothra by Anvil. It essentially, Chris Sangrides, I think that's how that's pronounced, produced both the albums, and I think he kind of, lifted that for the end of this song, and I think it worked better with Painkiller than it did with Mothra, much as I like Mothra.
Yeah. I must say, like, so of course, my rating for this is A+++, definitely, and A+ is extending into, as Ravi said, into 86 characters or how many ever more you want to make or include in terms of character count. But safely, remember in the context I was asking the question, or the question was asked, that Priest needed to prove itself or reinvigorate itself or reinvent itself or just tell everyone that, hey, we fucking exist and we remember what we do. And this song, like, the moment it begins, that question is answered. Scott Travis sounds like a freaking drum machine. Halford sounds ferocious and dangerous. He also has a very weird habit of rolling his R's in this song. I don't know if I don't know why he does it, but he does. And, exactly. And it always fucking sticks out for me now. The more I listen to it, the more it becomes so super evident. Glenn Tipton's solo is sheer fucking skill on display, as if the guitarist knew that what he has to play will, like, have to save the world or galaxy or the entire universe or something of that sort. It's on that kind of a mission. I love the sweep picking. I love the wails. I love the fact that it doesn't end when you think it's supposed to end. And that's something I can say about the whole song, because even the solo by KK, it's so unexpected, right? Because it seems as if the track is about to end, but no, it's time for another guitar solo. The song structure in itself, it's like it just doesn't let up. It's like if you were playing Doom and you entered the cheat code for unlimited ammo and you have a rocket launcher and you can fucking just keep blasting rockets out of that rocket launcher and everything is fucking hitting the X on the target. Peter mentioned the Death cover, and I'm a huge fan of that song. I'm a huge fan of that cover. I think I've heard that cover probably more than the original. So much so that it takes a lot for me to digest the fact that there's no opening scream that accompanies the guitars on the original. Has Halford ever opened the song with those kind of screams that Chuck used? I don't know.
I haven't heard the Death cover, so.
What?
They do it live?
No.
You haven't heard the Death cover?
You haven't heard the Death cover? Holy shit, Ravi, you have to listen to it.
I think I've heard the Angra cover, but I haven't heard the Death cover.
No. Check it out. Yeah. Like it's honestly one of the very few covers that manages to live up to the original, if not surpass it.
Yeah.
So since we are in definite agreement that this track is definitely an A, how many ever pluses, let me then ask you guys, is this the best track Priest has ever written?
It's interesting you mentioned that, they kind of had to prove that they are back. I think what they proved with the song was that they were not just back, they'd gone further than they'd ever,
Yeah.
been, at least in terms of heaviness and aggression and punch and stuff like that. Because if you think about the 80s, you had the big British institutions of metal, which was Iron Maiden and, Priest. And Iron Maiden were getting more and more adventurous while at the same time maintaining a certain degree of heaviness, whereas Priest were kind of trying to become Motley Crue, with Turbo and a lot of the songs on it. And I think this was practically rewriting the blueprint on metal and on what Priest could be. And, it would have been very, very interesting to see where that lineup would have gone or what they would have done next had they organically stuck around for the next album. But of course, we'll never know that.
Exactly.
True.
Okay, cool. So, more fanboyism coming up because next up is Hell Patrol. Peter, start this one off.
So the thing is, right, with the like, if you just hear Painkiller and then you hear this song back to back, and that's my main critique really of this album per se. It's just the sequencing of the tracks, right? Because you and I'll come to it, of course, once we come to the later tracks. But typically you'd have like, and I'm sure you would have heard it because I heard it first on CD. But like when you heard it on cassette, Ravi, like you typically have most of the bands like have their best tracks on the A side.
Yeah.
And back to back, when you have like a track like Painkiller and then you have this, you're just like, okay, what happened, man? Or what's going on here, right? I mean, of course, there is those elements that you associate with the Priest. I mean, that, those chugging riffs and things like that. But just if it was anywhere else placed on the album, maybe I would have given it a different rating. But just when it's back to back right after Painkiller, I mean, for me, it's like kind of a B plus. What about you guys?
Okay. All right, we'll live with that. Ravi, what about you?
Oh, with me, that's another A+ track. I completely disagree with Peter there. I think, after Painkiller, you kind of need something that takes a bit of the edge off, but at the same time still has a lot to say for itself. And I think Hell Patrol does that really well. I think it's a classic deep cut because if you think about the entire section after the solo, the entire Crow Monsters, the part where he's like really, really high, that's so fantastic because, the song previously has had him sing more at his mid-range and, it's such a brilliant moment and there's so many dynamics to that song. It's amazing. Another A+ song for me.
Thank God you're saying it because I was going to say the same thing. It's definitely an A+ track for me too. Now here's what's interesting about this entire album. Each and every song has an excellent fucking chorus. Yeah. All the choruses you will remember, and Hell Patrol just does that again. For me, it's a clear A+ too, which takes me to Anurag. Anurag, are you with Ravi and me, or are you with Peter?
Yeah, I know. I'm with you guys mostly because I feel like what it does is it instantly like takes things up quite a notch. Like I feel like the song, like it's way more concentrated than Painkiller, which is like a 6-minute song, and this was like 3.5 minutes, and like I feel like it still packs in so much. Like this is like that intense, like all out. I mean, it's almost surprising there's a second song because it
exactly
takes it up to the next level.
Yeah. So what's your grade on that?
Yeah, it's still A+. Yeah.
Cool. Alrighty, Peter, we have you cornered. Are you changing your vote?
I don't know. No, not at all. Not at all. But I do agree with you. But the two things. I mean, I'm kind of preempting the next part, but like it's what you said in the start, right? It's both the guitarists are just like on fire, and it's like with each track progressively, like you think like, okay, what's gonna come next, right? And one thing I really like about the guitar playing on this is it's not that shreddy wankery that you kind of see. It's really tastefully done stuff that you want to go back and I'm sure I would have.
Yeah.
I kept doing it a few times, going back, just listening to the solo sections on there. So yeah, man, it's really, really well done.
Alrighty.
Peter, which track would you put instead of Hell Patrol at 2?
That's an interesting question.
Yeah.
Damn, dude. I don't know. I'm looking at like the last, probably like, between the hammer and the anvil or a touch of evil. If you're looking at like a contrast or something like that, right? Those are the
Actually,
tracks.
between the hammer and the anvil, I can live with that.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Hmm.
Because there's something like, and who I can't remember who brought it up about the choruses, but it's all those tracks, right? I mean, and there's something about this album also. If you go play any of the tracks, there's like that distinct Judas Priestness, if I may say, right?
Yeah, it's very
Is there.
signature.
Yeah, very signature.
I think, yeah, it sounds Priest. There's no other way of putting it. It sounds British. It sounds Priest. Those are the only two words I can use to describe how the album sounds in terms of context beyond like the usual talk about production and stuff. Anyways, let's get into track number 3, which is All Guns Blazing. Ravi, take this one off.
Oh, again, complete A+ territory. I mean, the fact is, if you wanted, back-to-back Barnstompers album, this would have been the second track because it is just so ferocious.
Yep.
Right from the a cappella start to, the slow doomy bit right after the solo. I mean, I can't think of a more perfect metal track except maybe the title track and a few others that come along, which is why this is, let's not get ahead of ourselves. But yeah, this is definitely another A+ for me. Absolutely brilliant. There are some songs where you as a listener and as a listener who doesn't play anything, sit around thinking, if they'd only done this, it would have been, taken it up a notch, but you can't think of any such improvement to All Guns Blazing.
I completely agree with you. For me, it's an A+ as well. I mean, that guitar riff, the only annoying part of the song for me is that guitar riff that accompanies the chorus, which is meow, 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 meow.
Yeah, that's a little obvious maybe, but well.
yeah, whatever. But I'm guessing that's also one of the few riffs that you can easily play in a jam, and it's so fucking memorable that will always stick with you even after you've heard the song only once. Probably you'll probably be humming that riff somewhere. It'll be lodged in your subconscious at some point in time to come up on a weird night, and suddenly you're like, the fuck is meow, 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 meow.
Where have I heard this?
You're coming about, but I'm completely fine with it.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, yeah, if like you, I've probably heard the album so many times that it's these kind of things that begin to stick out more. But again, that's more of a good thing because you're hearing that album so many times.
Yeah.
I love the solos on this one. Again, I think Glenn Tiptonson just he just like, I think he's just outshone himself on this album as such with his playing. Lovely stuff. A+ for me too. Anurag, what about you?
Yeah, it's an A for me. I think not necessarily A+, I guess, because like by this point, like you're sort of like any listener presumably would sort of be pretty familiar with what Priest does and like how they do it. So I feel like this track just offers a little bit more of that with obviously like a lot of like with total conviction, no doubt. Like that's why it's A. But yeah, like I still feel like like compared to at least the first two tracks, like it's sort of like plateauing in a sense. That's
okay. Cool. Peter.
Man, I'm just kind of building on what you said. It's like both the guitarists, right, put on like a masterclass of sorts. It's like, guys, this is how it's done. Like let us show you how it's done. And just like the solos, like back to back in there, and it doesn't seem like they're kind of out jostling each other or kind of outdoing each other. It's just like so well done in there. And I mean, the way I've written it is like they really go all guns blazing on this track. So definitely an A+ for me.
Okay, lovely. Let's move on to track number 4, Leather Rebel. I'll start this one off. In my head, this was the song that the band wrote just after writing Painkiller. And, while they were writing the song, they said, hey, let's write a song that's just as bombastic as Painkiller, But then they looked at the time and they realized that they have just, say, an hour of jam room or studio time left. And so instead of taking it as, as a device for procrastinating and saying, hey, it's okay, we'll just record the one riff and we'll come back to it in the next jam room session, they took it as a challenge. And so we get a Painkiller song that's only half the duration of the original. Because if you think about it, if you start dissecting this track as such, it opens like an inverted Painkiller, furious riffs, and then the drums come in to continue to build the intensity of it. The song structure is practically the same or similar. Glenn's and KK solos both start in a similar manner. They're both performed as the riffs change keys. I just wish Halford would have sung this song like Painkiller, but I guess there wasn't just enough jam time left to quickly complete it. Perhaps if it was on another album, this could have been the ideal opener too, and would be exactly like Painkiller in that sense. But still, having said all of that, definite A+ for me on this one. Peter, what about you?
You described it as a Painkiller light version or something like that.
Yeah, it's almost Painkiller light, but at the same time, that's not to say that it isn't a good song on its own.
No, of course. I mean, that's why it's an A for me. I mean, the first time you listening to this, you're like, wait, Painkiller, Leather Rebel. I mean, like, what the hell are these guys talking about? And then, of course, in your adolescent mind, it's like, what are these anti-superheroes or villains or what's going on, right? And I think that was one of the cool things about listening to metal also, right? They have these kind of fantasy of sort figures in there. So yeah, but again, I love the opening in there, and this is one of those tracks where you can kind of say, if you had to choose a few tracks and say, boss, if you have to listen to Judas Priest, these are one of the few tracks you listen to and you'll know,
I just fucking give them this album.
Yeah, true. I mean, that's...
Hey, you go listen to this.
Pretty much.
I just remembered a story I should have added about this album, but I think I'll close up with it. But go ahead. Who's next? Anurag?
But wait, what's your grade?
A, of course. Man.
A, all right, cool. Ravi?
Actually, this song I kind of retrospectively grew to appreciate. It was one of my least favorite songs out the gate as far as the album is concerned, because there were 3 songs that I liked a great deal, and there was a 4th song coming up after this which was absolutely fantastic, which was Metal Meltdown. And so this felt slightly obvious. It was kind of like a less literate version of Breaking the Law. It was, Leather Rebel, Lighting in the Dark, blah, blah, blah. It didn't really impress me back in the day, but, that's also because I guess when you just start getting into something, you have no idea of quality, right? It's only later on when you listen to a lot of shit that you realize that a song that you thought was maybe not all there was actually all there. Because there's so few songs like that per se. So, retrospectively an A, initially a B+.
Okay. But wait, what made you think that? Was it the music, or was it the vocals, or what? Overall,
I thought it was a little phoned in. I mean, I think it's similar to the sense that you had about it being a bit of a rush job. A lot of the finessing that is so much a part of the album does not really seem to land as hard on Leather Rebel as it does on a lot of the other tracks in the album. Also, considering the kind of musical and lyrical stuff you had so far, Leather Rebel seems a little obvious and, fairly bog standard heavy metal kind of.
Yeah. Again, I'll come to this after Anurag states his grade.
Yeah, man. I mean, it was, I think that's what I realized, just first you said about, you use the word bombastic, for example, that was very apt, that was actually something I was exactly thinking of describing this as. And then just generally hearing all you guys also talk about it, it feels just the way it's, again, with the sequence and stuff, I think it comes down to who, the listener being sort of grasping what's going on, basically, right? Because it's such I mean, oftentimes, right? Like, I mean, a good metal album will overwhelm you. So, I mean, a
Yeah.
good album period will overwhelm you. So, like, a good metal album will like probably overwhelm you in like nonstop, basically. So,
Pummel you.
I feel like that's what happens in these like the tracks that come after Painkiller, like just these 3 and 4, basically between All Guns Blazing and Leather Rebel. So, like for me, like I sort of like spotted it in All Guns Blazing, but like then when I heard Leather Rebel, I was like, yes, like they're just offering just like really conviction heavy tunes, basically. So in that way, it's still an A+ for me.
Yeah. So I personally, I think Halford's the weakest link on Leather Rebel. Maybe it is to do with the lyrics. Maybe it's to do with his vocal performance. It seems like he's conserving his voice rather than going out about like fully out.
Yeah, especially
Which I think the music does.
What the next song is,
Exactly. Yeah.
It's like saving himself. It's like
Yeah, but that's the
Again,
thing, right? Like I don't know if the band recorded all the songs in order.
Eventually, of course.
Yeah.
Exactly. Anyways, since we are talking about it, it's still an all A's from all of us here at the moment. That was Leather Rebel. So let's move on to Metal Meltdown. Ravi, start off
Oh,
this one.
fuck. I mean, that's just such an amazing freaking song. If you think about it, if people want to be very nitpicky, they bag on me for saying Leather Rebel is a bit of a bog standard heavy metal song. So is Metal Meltdown, but it's the most awesome standard setting bog standard heavy metal song you'll ever find anywhere.
Yeah.
There's there's literally thousands of bands that have written songs about the power and glory of metal. I think Priest did one in just the album before with Heavy Metal from Ram It Down, which starts off with a similar guitar trade-off kind of thing. But, it's almost like that was a demo for what would eventually be Metal Meltdown, which is such a vastly superior track on every single parameter.
Yeah.
So A++ is extending to infinity again. Incredible song.
Yep. And as you mentioned, and as we were discussing, Halford is in impeccable fucking form on this song.
Oh, yeah.
Like he's like back to his Painkiller version or Painkiller avatar as such. He's fucking awesome.
You think I'm taking
like
a
once
break?
you're listening to this entire album, right? By this song, by Metal Meltdown, like I'm still wondering, and after having heard the album, I don't know how many ever times, but while I was listening to it today again in preparation for this pod, again, the first question that comes to mind while listening to Metal Meltdown is, what planet is fucking Scott Travis from? Because I kid you not, I'm sure half the people listening to this for the first time would have thought that this was a drum machine on play, but it's fucking not. And then you get like dueling solos, warfaring actually for the first time on this entire album, which sounds very Slayer-esque in places, right? Which is weird. I mean, I guess I can understand that. And again, this is hindsight talking, because apparently the last tour that Priest did before stepping into the studios to record Painkiller was the Ram It Down tour, on which they chose to let Slayer play opening band as such. And perhaps listening to Slayer gave Priest the almighty kick in the butt, and they all decided that, holy fuck, we need to really up our game and up our just up everything as such.
Up the ante.
So yeah, the ante has been upped completely. A fucking 4+ or 3+ for me too. What about Anurag?
Oh, for me, man, yeah, man, definitely A+ as well, because like everything about it just has all the makings of, like if you play this song to anybody, like on the road, like like in a plane or anywhere, like they'll just be like, yeah, that sounds like
Judas Priest.
yeah, I mean, they'll just be like, yeah, that sounds like heavy metal. Like that's literally how sort of defining it is. I mean, I know I've used that word already, but yeah, like it feels that way just throughout, like just every second of it feels just there's just so much surety in the way they've like written the song, executed it, and everything. So definitely A+.
And fuck the vocal line. I mean, you kind of think that the Halford speak with out of control, and then he moves an entire octave higher for
Yeah.
how to explode. Goosebumps. Fuck, that's amazing.
Yeah, man. I mean, like, especially the part where he goes like out of control. I'm not gonna even attempt it like I did in a previous episode. but like when he's like when it's coming at you, like, dude, this is like, I talked about Glenn and KK doing like a masterclass on guitar. This is Halford doing a masterclass on vocals.
Singing,
Like,
yeah.
guys, this is how it's done, and it's like, if you look at it, it's like he's that elder statesman where everyone's thinking like, chal, his time has come, and he's like, wait, guys, I still have it. Like, I still got it. And especially if you look at it, like we were talking about the earlier track, right? Like, it was like literally like he's saving himself for this. Like, wait, you guys haven't seen the thing. And if you think about it, this is like the end of side A, right? And especially the metal meltdown, like, chorus vocals or gang vocals, whatever you want to call it, towards the end of the track. That's like, I mean, this is one of the things that, you'd love to like watch in a live setting. So it's like infinity pluses plus 2 horns up for this track. I mean, like, man, this is an awesome.
I mean,
awesome
we can do an entire freaking podcast on just this one song.
Yeah.
Kind of like they're killing in the name of, to, call back one of your previous episodes. In the sense that if you think about Metal Meltdown, there's a whole bunch of elements that have been there in a lot of the other songs.
Yeah.
For instance, the entire kind of almost marching sort of sound towards the end of Metal Gods. There's a sense of that in the Metal Meltdown kind of part towards the end. And it's almost like they stitched together every single song that they'd previously done on heavy metal to create the ultimate unbeatable song about heavy metal, and that's Metal Meltdown.
Okay, cool. Wow. Alrighty. Moving on to the next track. Track number 6.
I want
another banger. This is Nightcrawler. It's another fucking memorable chorus. That's like 6 for 6 now so far. Harmonized guitar leads after the chorus, followed by Painkiller Halford once again. I love the mellow. I mean, I guess you can call it mellow because that's the mellowest part of the whole album for me. But it's such a fucking hypnotic riff. Overall, yeah, I'm just going to say this is another A+. 6 for 6 on that too for my side.
No, for sure. Like, I mean, like, I guess in the context of this being the first song on side 2, like, I would feel like they probably just wanted to come back with something that's just like, as hard hitting as possible. And like, man, again, like, it's one of the most catchiest metal songs ever, that definitely. And like, the amazing part about that is that it doesn't sort of, like lose sight of, being a metal song. Like, it doesn't compromise on anything to be that way. Like, everything that they're doing in the song is still very much like trademark metal, like, and it's specifically trademark Priest because, with Halford's vocals and it's everything. So, man, it's A+ for me.
Okay, Peter?
So, this song is freaking, I don't know. I can't even describe it because like when he sings, right, Nightcrawler, it's just like, whoa, what the hell, man? I mean, and again, one of the things is that intro, right, which you're just like, okay, what's coming? And these are the times I wish I had heard it like on a cassette or vinyl. I don't know, visual thinking. Just you're waiting, kind of seeing those first initial seconds out, like what's happening in there, and then it kicks in. And again, like the lovely dual guitars in the middle of the track, man. It's just like so beautiful. But unfortunately, an Indian band, I don't know, I'm sure Ravi might remember this from the forum days, did like a terrible cover to it. And I hope no one is ever introduced to the band.
Nightcrawler?
Yeah.
Oh, who did that?
I don't remember this.
I only remember the good cover that Albatross did.
Oh yeah, at least that's where like I think Albatross kind of redeemed Indian metal for that. But Dementia had done a cover of it online.
Dementia? Really?
Oh, fuck, I gotta dig this up now.
If anyone listening has a clue about dementia, please
even
do write
Anurag's
into
laughing.
us. It's part of metal history. It's part of Indian metal history.
I think Ravi, I'm going to send you the track if I can find it.
Oh, fuck, please.
Send
do.
us the track.
Not
Send
okay.
the whole world the track. We should host it.
Have
We
this
should host it and have an entire episode dedicated to dementia, please. That's a part of Indian metal history that needs to be documented and preserved and probably set inside a time capsule so that people 20 years or 30 years or 100 years down the
I know,
line
I'd shoot that
can
shit
dig
into
up.
space. This is what the aliens need to know about us.
Exactly. That there
have
was
plans
a
like
one-man
dementia.
project called Dementia. Which was, right? Which it was. Come on.
Yeah.
Full respect.
Yeah.
But
Oh,
wait,
God.
quickly, grades.
Of course, A plus infinity, man.
A plus to infinity. Alrighty.
So, Nightcrawler, absolutely amazing song. And, I mean, kind of like, if you think about it, it's almost like this is the song where the guitarists are taking a bit of a break because the
Yeah.
lead is relatively simple. It was simple enough for one of the bands that I kind of grew up back in the days when Indian bands only played covers. There was a band that used to do Nightcrawler, and I think their bassist would like kind of breathe fire during the solo, and that was their USP. And the reason they picked Nightcrawler was because it was the easiest thing in the Priest catalog to do.
Hey, if Dementia can play it, come on, man.
Yeah, but if you
Just
think
kidding.
if you think about Nightcrawler, I think what sets it apart from 1,000 clone songs is the atmosphere of it,
Yeah.
which is genuinely foreboding and absolutely incredible. I mean, I'd say even in the Priest discography, the only song that they've done that's as atmospheric as Nightcrawler is probably The Ripper.
Really? Okay. But wait, what's your
In
grade?
the sense of, it being a song about a foreboding presence who's out to get you.
In that sense, because there's a very good contender to being one of the best atmospheric tracks that's going to come up very quickly in this discussion too. But anyways, before that, what's your grade?
Oh, A+, obviously. Yeah.
Sweet. Let's move on to the next track number 7, Between the Hammer and the Anvil. Peter, you start this one off.
Yeah, it's track number 2 as far as Peter is concerned. So,
I mean, so for me, at least, like, this song is one of those tracks that all you need is like one listen for that opening riff to get like stuck in your head, man. I mean, it's so freaking. I don't know. Like, I really wish I could like go back in time and just like, when they were recording the album, just kind of see what the hell they were up to in there, or what their discussions were, or
Okay.
they were just like, bringing in these riffs and saying, hey, check this out. Okay, record it, that kind of thing. What were they up to then? Similar, like, even the solo from like 2.5 minutes past. And then again, after the back-to-back solos in there. I mean, there's so much really to enjoy in the track. So definitely an A+ for me.
Okay, cool. Anurag.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's once again sort of surprises me, at least now, like when I'm hearing it, that like all these songs are on the same album, like it's
Exactly.
Yeah, the greatest hit, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like really surprising, man, that like just one after the other, it's just like again, like really catchy, like kind of like hooks, and just again, like it's so just genre defining again, like I said. So it's I mean, yeah, at this point in the album it feels like, man, like how are they still doing this? Like it's like that level of like I guess in terms of sequencing and just like listening to it, that you feel like there's still a song here which sounds like it could have been the opening track, or which could have been.
Yeah.
So yeah, man, definitely A+.
Okay, Ravi.
Yeah, same. I mean, I think Anurag said it best when he said, here's a track that could have been the opening track. And, there are albums that I think, at least I, as a huge old school metal fan, love, which have title tracks that are weaker than Between the Hammer and the Anvil, and no track in the entire duration that's as strong as it is. And I still like those albums, so you can just imagine how much I like Between the Hammer and the Anvil. It's great. And what's amazing is the fact that it still holds its own in spite of the fact that it's coming before three of the most perfect metal tracks ever recorded. So, and, after Nightcrawler. So it's doing a lot of heavy lifting and it's absolutely amazing. So yeah, A+.
Okay, so I'll keep my grade very short. It is definitely an A+ for me, but I have a couple of points that I like to just discuss. The intro. I mean, how the song begins. I'm not entirely like when it first begins like that. I'm not entirely sure of what I'm getting. Suddenly, it felt like, what are they trying to do? But then I realized that I'm guessing this was their attempt at doing a siren without it actually being a siren, right? Because especially your first lyric is storm warning, but there's no fear, right? And I think that this is more of a Priest that everybody was pretty much used to, right? Except the explosion and the wail at the beginning, of course. What really makes this track super interesting for me are two elements as sorts. So first one is there's these very tiny guitar fills throughout the song, like kind of pepper things in it, be it the licks that suddenly appear to bridge parts, or be it the harmonic melody that kind of accompanies the vocals, especially in the first chorus. And that's one thing that completely makes the song for me. And the second one is, did anyone and try and answer this as honestly as you guys can, did anyone really expect the mid-tempo riff that begins just after the first chorus? I didn't.
Nope.
Because like to me that's one of the parts of the song that sounds like it's not necessary as such. I mean, you could have just begun Tipton's solo section straight after the chorus and the track would still flow. But the fact that they chose to include it and the fact that it exists and that you can still bang your head to it, that's what truly matters. Like at the end of the day, they knew what they were doing completely to let that section in, because if that section was missing, perhaps Tipton's solo might have got lost in the shuffle. And I fucking love the outro. Because not just because it's a great outro, but also because you don't know what's about to hit you, because next it leads so smoothly into a touch of evil, which to me is my like the second best song on this entire album. It's like 8,000 pluses again, because suddenly Halford's personality has changed. He's no longer this aggro metal dude, but he's fucking scary now. Like he reminds me of Shah Rukh Khan in Dar, that kind of scariness. Please, it's a good fucking movie, okay?
It is.
Yeah.
I especially like the part where, I know we're getting a little sidetracked here, but I especially like the part where Dalip Tahil is complaining to the psychiatrist saying, my son keeps speaking to his mom all the time. And the psychiatrist is like, what's the problem? And it's like, his mom is dead. Way to bury the lead, Dalip Tahil.
But just imagine, in my weird reinterpretation of Dar, Juhi Chawla gets possessed as such by Shah Rukh Khan, or finally develops Stockholm syndrome and says Shah Rukh Khan, okay, cool, I am your Kiran.
Oh shit!
And
this
then
is that movie.
and then a touch of evil plays and it's picturized on Juhi Chawla. It would be so fucking fitting, man.
I think you're trying to ruin the song for me here.
I'm not trying to fucking ruin anything, because in my head, it's working out absolutely perfectly, right?
I see. That's the thing. With a touch of evil, right? You don't really know what it is about. You initially think that it could be about drugs or alcohol or like a stalker, like you're talking.
I don't think it's about I spoke about Stockholm syndrome. I didn't talk about a stalker as such.
I'm saying.
Anyways, the hidden star of this track for me is Chris T. Again, I'm not going to butcher his surname, who's on keyboard and synths. His work is peppered through the album. Of course, also the producer.
By the way, it's on Don Airy on the keyboards.
What? Sorry?
It's Don Airy.
Don Airy.
Oh, I thought it was Chris T.
No, it's
Mr.
Don
Crowley
Airy
himself.
Yes.
Because his name is included in the song credits.
Huh.
And that's where I was going with it, because it's
So-
finally on this one that he's gotten a songwriting credit.
Because that's his song that they built on. That
Oh,
was
really?
one-
I didn't even
yeah.
know that.
Yeah. So basically, that's what I was reading. Sorry if I'm kind of
No.
interrupting
Please
your
take
train
it
of
away.
thought. But basically, like what I was reading is about Christie having these, he had like a library of sorts of all these samples and things like that. And while they were sitting in the production room, he played the part of A Touch of Evil, and they said, "Hey, we like that. Can we kind of jam on it or work on it?" And that's why he has a songwriting credit in it. Yeah. So
Awesome.
and that's why I was reading also, right, about like Don Airy being part of it, and I was like, whoa, like you don't kind of
Actually,
expect.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Thanks
So
for bringing that up, Peter.
Yeah.
so this
I
is
think
really
all
cool.
of us have been really dropping the ball on reading our CD liner notes.
No, this is so. I mean, like for me, I touched upon Judas Priest and at home, right? I actually convinced my mom to buy this CD for me, even though it had
Okay.
a name like this. So yeah, thanks,
Hey,
mom.
but this is probably one of the easier buys, right? Because you can be like, hey, this is Painkiller. It kills pain.
Yeah, I mean, do we know if ibuprofen was already invented by then? I don't know.
Okay, who's going?
Okay,
to this?
wait. I have to finish this.
Sure.
Glenn Tipton's solo on A Touch of Evil is another solo from this entire album that I can almost sing note for note. It's that memorable for me. I've heard it probably, I don't know how many ever times.
Plus, you got an amazing voice then, dude.
I don't. I honestly don't. But I can try and like almost match it. Like, you know what I'm saying. You've all
Yeah.
fucking sung solos before. But 10 out. Wait.
Yeah.
I was reading an article on invisible oranges. Okay, wait.
Yeah.
Before we get sidetracked, I was reading an article on invisible oranges about the production of this album, and the engineer has a story about Halford's vocals. Apparently, Halford's notes or his singing broke perfectly good working mics.
Yeah.
And I have to think that many of the damages were caused by that one line that comes in at around 4 minutes 40 seconds.
Well,
By the way,
one that ends with "You're possessing me."
Yeah. No, but that Invisible Oranges article is brilliant. We have to put that in the show notes because that's a great way to kind of like, it's a great accompaniment to listening to the album.
Yeah. It talks to Scott Travis at length, and it talks to the engineer on this album. So yeah, please do check that out because it has some lovely stories. Oh yeah, but anyways, before I digress even more, A double plus, A quadruple plus for me on my side. Peter, since you've already spoken about it, what's your grade?
Of course, anything less than A times infinity plus it will be
okay. Lovely. So, Anurag, have we left anything for you to say?
Yeah, probably just A plus. No, but yeah, I really enjoyed it, man. Like, I mean, it's so like just the atmospherics of this and just the way they've constructed it. Like, you know that this is a track they wanted to be their calling card in many ways. And man, like goosebumps, man. Every time I hear it, I'll just be like, this is exceptional. So yeah.
Okay, Ravi.
Oh yeah, I mean, I actually have a fairly decent story on this. This was back in the day, one of the first heavy metal videos I ever saw on MTV and post-liberalization India, and the video is sinister as all get out. I mean, now,
sinister.
All of us...
That's a fucking good word to describe
now,
this song.
all of us have, of course, seen... I mean, we're practically saturated with edgy imagery and, your Twitter timeline, if you're unlucky, will have at least one beheading and one mutilation. But, the video had these Pentecostal Christians, some kind of a riff on them. You have these people handling snakes. You have this, Damien-like child in between all of them, and it kind of calls back to The Omen, which is, of course, one of the all-time great horror films. And that's interspersed with footage of the band, and it's just goosebump-inducing. I mean, at least that's the way it was the first time I saw it. So, yeah, absolutely fantastic song. It's also a song which I have very, very pleasant memories of because, band tried to cover it during the live wire realms when, they used to go on all night.
Oh.
The guy lost his voice in the parts where Rob Alford isn't really singing high. And by the time he got the option,
Sadly, Rob
Yeah.
Halford didn't possess him, I'm guessing.
yeah, it basically sounded like a rat being dropped a lift shaft or something like that.
Oh man.
Alrighty. Let's move on to the next track, which is Battle Hymn. Now, let me throw a question out here. Battle Hymn is a musical interlude that's under a minute. Do you guys actually want to rate this one on its own, or would you rather?
Fuck yes.
Okay, cool. Go for it then.
I made it one track. So go.
Yeah, so did I. I like to think of it more as an intro to One Shot at Glory than a
I
track on its
honestly
own.
think this is the best intro like ever. I mean, I think this beats the Hellion Electric Eye combo, and it's so. I mean, it's one of those things that you kind of hear and you want to strap on armor and go out to do battle. I mean, it's
Which is exactly
so-
what it does, right? I mean, it's
Exactly.
following, it's building up to a song like One Shot at Glory.
exactly, and it's so I don't know. Moving is perhaps a word that you wouldn't really associate with Judas Priest, but it's got that kind of emotional heft to it, and it's brilliant. And then it leads directly into One Shot at Glory. So for my money, even if the rest of Painkiller had been absolute dog crap, it would have still been a great album just for Battle Hymn and One Shot at
Do
Glory.
you think Battle Hymn would have been a good opener?
Definitely.
Okay, cool. I'll take that because on its own, I think Battle Hymn is a good enough opener or a good enough interlude. But maybe it could have been more epic. I don't know.
I
Still,
don't think
that's
it
just
possibly have been more epic. I think that was Priest's. What's the track that Iron Maiden stole off Samson? Was it Genghis Khan or was it the Ides of March? I forget. One of their instrumentals. The da da da. That one.
that's the Ides of March, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Anurag, what about you?
Yeah, man, I think I'm going to take both of them together as well because it just, but I mean, like, this is where I feel like what Peter was saying earlier about like maybe like sequencing or something like that. Like, I feel like this is where it absolutely works, like because after Touch of Evil and then Battle Hymn and then One Shot at Glory, like, I feel like it just makes sense. It just, I think it finally has like a sense of like journeying, like where you like, okay, like they're taking us through this, like, in a sense. And of course, it's not necessary that an album should necessarily do that. It could just be all like,
Exactly.
what cool kids call bangers, like one after the other, So, but yeah, man, I really enjoyed just the way both of these tracks come together and that how it just sort of bows out from the album, basically. Really exceptional that I mean, it doesn't even feel like the end of the album, actually, in that sense. You're still like waiting for like, come on, there's got to be more than this. But yeah, man, like I definitely loved all the, and again, it's like a longer song. So I feel like I was waiting for Priest to like just, this side is longer than, the side one, right? So like I feel like they really know how to sustain your interest, like in both ways, whether they're making like those really power packed like 3.5-minute songs or like 4-minute songs, or even if they're making like a 6-minute sort of thing. So they just do an exceptional job of holding one's attention, basically, and even as the album closes out, which is pretty important. So definitely A+ for me.
Okay, so you've taken Battle Hymn and One Shot at Glory together, and so let me do the same thing. Let me just build up on that. I think fucking like One Shot at Glory on its own is a brilliant fucking track. I think it's, if like we've all heard of Liquid Courage, but if you ever needed oral courage, this would be a perfect example. Which leads me to ask, how come this song has never been used as part of a montage for like a Rocky movie or even say Chuck Day or something of that sort? Because it's,
Thank
like,
God
imagine that, right? If suddenly like instead of Shah Rukh Khan's speech, you get you get fucking one shot at glory and a training montage of everyone.
Enormous sync potential, basically.
Enormous thing. Like this should be like the default
If that
opener
does
to any
happen,
IPL
I'll
game.
beat myself to death with a hockey stick.
Yeah, but it has that power. It has that power. Halford's vocals, those sound a bit weird, right? Like I don't know if it's just me, because it's in the middle, in around the second verse of the song, it's almost as if it's the raw recording, because it doesn't sound as processed as the other parts of the song do, which is very weird. But it doesn't really take away from this absolute banger of a track, and it's also like one of the few songs here in which KK gets a lot of space to shine as such. Um, I love that very Maiden-esque kind of a section after the solos, where you have the harmonized guitars. Was this really necessary? I'm not sure, but that one section makes this song a bit too long for my liking. But overall, it's a fucking fantastic song. It's my first A of this entire set so far, but it's still an A. And even Battle Hymn, even if you take it with Battle Hymn or if you take it without Battle Hymn, it's still an A for me. So yeah, that's my opinion on this. Ravi, what about you? One Shot at Glory specifically, or even together with Battle Hymn on its own?
Yeah, well, I mean, as standalones, both of them are fantastic. Put them together, and frankly, that's the best part of that album as far as I'm concerned. And it's, back at that time, I think one of the things that people used to do is, you'd have the really good songs at the start and the really good songs at the end. I'm not sure if this was a very widely accepted practice, but what I used to do when I was buying a tape is I'd ask the guy to play the first few minutes of the first song, then flip it around and play the last few minutes of the last song, and that I can form some kind of a rough idea of how the album
is.
But One Shot at Glory is just fantastic. I mean, I completely disagree with you. I think that entire extended dueling guitar part is what raises that song to the next level.
Oh, really?
Just gives it this very, very epic strum and drung kind of feel to it. It's absolutely brilliant. In fact, one of the reasons I did not buy the reissue when it came out was because I thought the album ended exactly where it needed to end, and I didn't want anything more after One Shot at Glory.
Okay. So wait 1 second. You're definitely rating this A A more A pluses.
One of those A pluses extending to infinity songs. Again.
All right.
I
Peter,
like it even more than I like the title track. So it's definitely my favorite part of the album, and I actually think Painkiller is an album which has a stronger side B than it has a side, because I don't care too much for Leather Rebel. So I think the side B just kicks it up a notch, which considering how strong side A is like quite
that's saying something. Peter, what about you?
No, that's actually the exact point I was going to make. Like, if you look at it, right, and I mean, I mentioned earlier about the sequencing. If you look at all the tracks on side B, we've consistently talked all about them, and also, and I don't know what they were thinking about during the tape days, but it's a strong way to end the album. And yours at some point, you're like Animesh said, you're singing along like One Shot at Glory. This is like one of those pump it up kind of tracks. So yeah, but for me, it's, I think, just because of the length, I guess. But I'm giving it an A. That's the only kind of reason.
Cool. So we can end here, and so far every song apart from Peter's vote for Hell Patrol has gotten an A. So we can just end it here, but I think we should still include the two tracks that came out along on the reissue as such, which is first one of them being Living Bad Dreams. I'll take a shot at it first. I rated this an A minus. I love the synths. It's the star of this track for me. The onslaught is over as such, so you need a song to end the album, I guess, but that doesn't mean the chorus doesn't need to be hooky, because the chorus once again is fucking hooky. But it's like, if you were to listen to this the reissue and not the original album, then it's such a fucking weird vibe to end an album though, right? I mean, you're leaving the listener with the story or the idea that all of it was just a bad dream. It's a pessimistic tone if I've ever heard one. That being said, it's still an A minus from my side. So yeah. Any of you care to comment on Living Bad Dreams?
Actually, I've never heard that song because, like I said, I didn't bother getting the reissue. I believe Painkiller is about as perfect an album as you're ever going to get. And, I honestly feel that if you're going to add to a track like that, just bash out another CD and stamp those songs on that instead of, basically it's kind of like, oh, Mona Lisa would look better with a mustache. Let's just try this one on. No, you don't do that.
Okay, cool. We'll completely take that. Anurag, what about you? Have you heard Living Bad Dreams?
No, I haven't actually. And I guess the only sort of thing I can say is that, I guess you have to consider it as just an outtake rather than an actual.
Yeah.
So it's weird. Like when I was reading about this track, even the band doesn't know why this track was left off the album, which is so weird, right?
So the band the band wanted it on the album?
Yeah. And I mean, I guess that's why it was on the remastered.
Could have pushed it over the 50-minute mark, at which point of time there's a bit of a degradation of sound as far as vinyls are concerned.
Okay.
Vinyls were still in production at that time. Maybe that was the consideration.
Possibly,
there.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's just a possible theory, but
Yeah. I mean, I like the solo that's there from like 3-minute mark again, and like for me, I mean, I guess I've heard the remastered.
I've heard the remasters more too. Like, yeah.
So that's why I'm okay with it, really.
So wait, so since it's only Peter and me on this one, then I've rated it an A minus. Peter, what about you?
I put it in as A.
As an A.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not going to get into rating Leather Rebel live because we've already done Leather Rebel as such. So yeah. But having said that, gentlemen, we have a second all A.
Wait, are we not doing artwork? Come on.
Oh yeah, even if we come on, musically definitely. Musically so far everything's an A already.
Yeah.
And let's then talk about artwork. Since you brought it up, Peter, what are you rating it? Are you rating it any differently other than an A?
Oh, dude, for me, this is like metal as fuck, man. I mean, dude, what a freaking... I wish I could find like a reasonably priced T-shirt of this.
I haven't yet found a poster or a T-shirt of it, like which fulfills Indian shopping conditions, by which I mean is easily available in India and also doesn't cost a fucking bomb to ship to India.
No, man. Ravi sitting in Singapore smiling at us like.
Actually, funnily enough, I'd ordered this on vinyl, and Flipkart flubbed my order and gave it to a guy who I actually knew.
Wow.
Name is eluding me at the moment, but yeah.
It's not Ravi B.
No.
Mistaken case of Ravi. But yeah, dude, I mean, like the artwork is like phenomenal. I mean, and even if you look at it like with the other Priest's artwork, right? It's just like, whoa, man. So
yeah,
definitely.
I mean, if you think about it, I'd say the artwork had kind of been. I'd say the Defenders of the Faith artwork was pretty good.
Yeah.
Which one? I mean, what came after that? Was it
Screaming for Vengeance? No.
Yeah, Screaming for Vengeance was again pretty good. Turbo, not so much. Ram It Down, interesting but a little obvious and meh. Painkiller, absolute stunner artwork.
Yeah, they've always like Priest. I don't think they've ever flubbed artwork as such. I mean, the only one that I really don't like is Nostradamus was okay for what it was.
Yeah,
I did enjoy Turbo as an album artwork.
It would have been great for a Duran Duran album, but it was not a Judas Priest album cover.
Exactly. Anyways, Anurag, quick views.
Yeah, man, sure. I mean, as far as metal artwork goes, like, yeah, it was definitely something that you look at and you'll just be like, I should probably listen to this.
Yep.
It's pretty much like, and I had never seen anything like it when I finally chanced upon it. Like I'd never, and which is so great, like, because I feel like bands like Judas Priest and Iron Maiden are also where they are because of the they paid importance to things like this. Like Iron Man had Eddie and Judas Priest. Clearly, like, like they had a thing with steel, so to speak, I suppose, or just like, chromatic, like sort of hues and stuff like that. So I think they use that really well to really catch everybody's eye.
Yeah. So on the artwork front, it's an A from all of us, which leads me to talk about production. I love it. Everything fucking sounds organic. Even most of the drumming, what you hear is the original drum sound. There's only like one part in the whole album that's been sampled, apparently. It's beautifully mixed, and then you go a bit deeper and you'll read about why this album is studied a lot. There's something called the vortex effect, which the album has used a lot in terms of bumping up the solos. Again, check out the Invisible Oranges article for a lot more context on that. Overall, it sounds fucking thunderous and exactly like how a metal record should sound. So full marks to everyone involved in making this sound like an absolute fucking banger. It's an A+ from me on production.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing you mentioned that, because like I said, the time I heard it was just shortly after it had been released, and I had very, very little context. It was, I think, the probably the 12th or 13th hard rock / heavy metal album I'd heard end to end at that point, and it just sounded so amazing. But you kind of took it for granted because you thought everything probably sounds like this. But it's only over time that you realize just how special and visceral the album is, and especially coming after Turbo and Ram It Down. I actually don't mind Ram It Down at all. I love that album, but I know it divides opinion quite severely. I even like the Johnny B. Good cover.
Okay, Peter, Anurag, chime in on production. Anything to add?
I don't know. I mean, you've kind of said it all, really. And I mean, I think even for me, this was one of those, I think, first 50th CDs of mine that I owned in there, because I think I was like still studying. I was in university, so you don't really buy that many CDs. And it was really, really good. I still own the CD, really one of my prized possessions. And
do you own the original issue, which has the kind of chainsaw effect on the CD?
Yeah, but the one I have is the remaster. But that also has it. Yeah, right. And that's pretty cool. So I mean, even like going through the artwork, that's why I appreciate the artwork also, right? You thumb through the inlay and stuff like that. So yeah, man, it's really special album for me.
Okay, Anurag?
Yeah, and as somebody who probably I went in reverse in terms of how I was introduced to a lot of heavy music, which is that like I heard a lot of the modern stuff and then went backwards to all the classics. Like in that sense, like it just holds up so well that there's nothing that, like, it has all the makings of a sort of classic sort of sound, but at the same time, it's, you could hear it today on your headphones and you just be like, man, this is like, this is like, there's bands that are still striving for this sound today.
Yeah, exactly. Right. It's an apt template or a reference point as such for how metal should sound.
Especially the drums, if you think about it, right? I mean, because in metal, one of the things you always you see certain bands really struggle is their drum sound, and how these guys kind of got it just right? I mean, it perfectly fits in with the rest.
Yeah, the guitar tones, they're so gnarly. I mean, it's like, a slavering dog growling at you. It's just amazing.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So that's on the production front, which then leads me to kind of get into final comments as such, or just talking about the legacy of this entire album, because it's pretty much clear now that this is an all A's album, and we've objectively rated it too. At least tried to be as objective as we can on it. And apart from that one B outlier of a vote, everybody on this podcast today has rated each and every song at least an A, which is great, as well as the artwork, as well as the production. So let's wind it down, and let me begin by saying this. I think this album will go down in history as the heaviest album Priest have ever recorded, at least so far. And I don't think there's any other album that can, dispute that fact or knock it off that title or that honor.
Yeah.
But my viewpoint is this: depending on when you got into Priest and what album you were introduced to first, this Painkiller may very well be your favorite Priest album of all time. It certainly is mine, and that's because this was the first ever Priest album I've heard. And once you hear something that's as heavy as this, every other Priest album just doesn't live up. So in my head, I imagined British Steel to be as fucking heavy as this, and it wasn't. And
So
it
what
made me
happened?
go like, what the fuck?
You must
So
have
what
been
happened when you heard Sin After Sin? You were like,
Exactly. I was
"Morning."
like, holy shit, what is this? Right? Because on one side, you have Painkiller, which is like this, which is basically, I think, Priest suddenly deciding to go like, fuck it. We are metal and we are going to be seen as the gods of heavy metal. And this is what we can do. And then after that, you go and revisit the discography and you're like, oh, but you have Painkiller. So yeah.
My thing is exactly what you said earlier, right? I'm very curious to know that, if the same lineup continued and put out an album a year or two later, right? Or even say 3 years later, I'm very curious to know what that would sound like. Really, would they like take it? Because if you think about it, right, this was 1990. So even if they released something in 93, 94, that was when like grunge had taken over. Would they have,
Cut their
taken
hair and become reload load?
I don't know. I mean, like you just wonder, right, at times like this, and especially with a band like Priest. I mean, when you release an album like Painkiller, what do you do post that, right? How do you kind of top that
Exactly.
off?
Yeah.
Can you top that off?
Can you top that off? I
Yeah.
I don't have an answer for that too. I mean, yeah. Before I ask any more questions, Ravi and Anurag, your concluding thoughts. Let's begin with Ravi.
Oh yeah, I mean, like I said, this kind of set the template for a whole bunch of bands, especially the European metal scene. I think it owes a huge debt to Painkiller. I doubt it would exist in its current shape or form. Primal Fear, where would they be without the Painkiller template, which was, I mean, the larger Judas Priest template, but particularly Painkiller as a kind of foundational sort of album. I actually don't mind some of the earlier stuff because the thing is, I'd kind of heard a best of compilation with, songs like Delivering the Goods and You Got Another Thing Coming and stuff like that. So for me, this album was kind of like a part of a progression. And it's like, oh, okay, these guys have got really freaking heavy on this particular album now. But again, it was, at that odd stage where, you don't have too many inputs coming in and you take everything for granted because, you don't know any better. Definitely think it's one of the most influential heavy metal albums ever made.
Yep, completely agree with you on that front.
Possibly one of those, a handful of albums that, you could kind of give someone who wants to know what heavy metal is all about and say, yeah, this is it.
Yeah. Anurag?
Pretty much, man. I mean, like, as somebody who's actually not heard that many Priest albums, like, I feel like when you hear something like Painkiller, you'll just be like, maybe this is enough, like, I mean, like, it's not necessarily for like clout or anything like that, but to just know what Priest are all about, like, you just need to perhaps start and end here, and of course that's a very like contentious take, I'm sure, but at least for me personally, like, that's pretty much what I felt like. And obviously apart from this, like, I've heard British Steel and I've heard their hits, like Ravi said, like, I've also like chanced upon their greatest hits and stuff like that. But yeah, like album wise, like an entire album wise, yeah, I feel like this was quite like something that made you feel like, yeah, Judas Priest have still got it, basically. And that I mean, of course after this Halford left, right? So I guess that was kind of unfortunate, I guess, in terms of band history. But
I think it's one of the few moments in history that I wouldn't like to change, because I somehow get this feeling that if the lineup had continued, we wouldn't have, like, it would become either a pale imitation or it would, I don't know, they would want to change their sound,
or you would have a MTV Unplugged Judas Priest.
which wouldn't be fucking bad. Like imagine
Yeah.
imagine a Touch of Evil Unplugged. It would still fucking rock.
The Touch of Evil Unplugged would have been great. Painkiller Unplugged.
You can't do that unplugged, man. I'm just sorry. Like yeah. I've tried it and it fucking sucks.
Oh.
We need to hear the trial of yours. I have a feeling it'll be on par with the Dementra Nightcrawler.
Thanks for setting some standards. Okay, we've talked more than an hour about an album that's rightly one of the best albums ever to be released in the heavy metal sphere, and that's what Horns Up is all about. It's all about just rediscovering and discovering more music in this heavy metal realm that all of us can fucking rock our heads to and just go horns up.
Horns up, guys.
Thumbs up, guys. Thank you for having us.
Do you want to do it for the 100th time, Animesh?
What? Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah. And so for the 100th time, you guys know where to find us. We are at hornsuppod.com. We are on Twitter. We are at hornsuppod. I'm at Asmoani.
I'm at Trend Crusher.
And this was Horns Up.
Horns up, guys.